Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Game Club podcast. I am your host, as always, and I am joined by these two lovely gentlemen, George and Jake.
Hey guys.
Hello. Look at this. I didn't want to bring my regular light in here, so we got overhead lights. So I got the
Okay,
shiny
very good.
cue ball.
You have literally have
out.
overhead light. There's a light on your head. It's
Yeah,
right.
my head is super bright. So sorry for anybody watching the video. I know it's blinding.
I'm
just
sure
had
it'll
to
be
point
fine.
that
We'll
out.
make do. Do you wax? Do you like get a sheet and just kind of like
No,
wax your hair?
no, I just buzz it with regular clippers. I really wish I could just not have to ever buzz it. I wish it didn't grow anymore. It's really annoying.
Couldn't you get like laser hair?
I was
removal?
just
but
gonna
that
ask
sounds
that.
complicated. Sounds like it might lead to cancer or something. Some more worse than just shaving it. But yeah, if it just stopped growing one day, it'd be fine.
Have you noticed
Maybe it will.
that the legitimate bald spot progressively gets bigger?
No, actually, I haven't really paid attention to it. I haven't let it grow out that much.
Okay. All right. Well,
So
My well, I won't get into it. I was going to talk about family and blah 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 and different hair lineage and okay. Anyways, video games is a thing we talk about here.
Yes.
video games.
and hair.
One thing I want and hair, yeah, video games and hair. That's our podcast. Welcome to the Gaming Hair Club podcast. Anyways,
Or
one
lack
thing I want to
thereof.
launch
Hair.
or lack thereof. One thing I want to launch into is we had brought up a topic on a previous podcast. And I wanted to launch into that, which is the difference between things that are meta and things that are fun, and how that affects the online landscape of a ton of different games. And an easy one to bring up is gotcha games. This is a pretty straightforward one. In gotcha games, there's two camps. There's people who play for the waifus, and then the people who play for the meta. And so when a new character comes out, they go, this character's cute, therefore I will get them, or cool, or whatever your preference is. And then this character is strong, and therefore I will roll for them. So a lot of people make big decisions on how they play the game based on who they level up and who they roll for and what characters they play with and different types of content. Personally, I have a history of being a really not meta person. I've never really been a huge meta guy, but I do definitely have a history of min-maxing. And so I like to take the things that I like from a fun perspective, or the things that I just like, and I like to min-max that. And I don't really care what the meta is, but I've noticed that as time has gone on and YouTubers create content for games and just information is more easily readily available for different things, it's easy to come up with the most effective strategy, the meta for all sorts of stuff.
I like that.
So
Min-max your own fun.
yeah, that's what I do,
That's
right?
cool. It's a cool idea.
That's kind of
Yeah,
what meta
I like-
is in a larger scope, though. I would think it's just the general practice of finding the most efficient thing. Part of the problem is a lot of times takes the fun out of the
Yeah, I was gonna
whatever
say
it is.
the most fun
that's
to
what
you and the most efficient for
Don't always
whatever
coincide.
the goal is
yeah.
at the time.
right.
It's
Most
not
of the
always
time, they
best.
don't align. For anyone listening, meta means most efficient tactic available. There may be some words that are slightly changed potentially, but I think that's the exact verbiage. But that's if you have if we have two characters in a game and one character is really cute, really cool, whatever, they have flashy abilities, and they get the job done well. But you have another character that, let's say, is really boring, and the way that you fight with them is just really awful and not super fun. But they do the job 10% faster than the other guy. Then this strategy becomes the meta strategy. And so all focus on anything other than this 10% better than this other focus is just completely, it's why would you ever waste your time doing anything but the absolute best thing you could possibly do?
Can I
Right?
say
That's
what I
pure
feel
meta.
like sometimes it really means though in a lot
Sure.
of games. It
Yeah.
obviously depends on the situation of games, but I feel like meta stands for like most expected or most represented tactics that you have to play around.
Definitely.
A lot of times you get into that because it doesn't always necessarily have to be the most efficient thing. It could just be the thing that most people um, are playing into at the time, and it's working.
Yeah.
And especially with games like that have hundreds of characters and different types of team tactics you could do. Those variables are so much that the metas are just taken by what's popular at the time. Of course, there's going to be very strong characters or specific tactics, yes, but with something that has that many characters and different types of teammates that like to play different things together, um, yeah, you can just get crazy with it. So a lot of times it's just what's most represented at the time.
And a lot of times too, it's like emulated from esports, like pro players, and they'll play like this specific thing, and then everyone's like, "Oh, that's the best thing to do," and they'll try and follow suit. But what most people don't realize is that it's people executing at the top tier level of whatever is possible for that specific game, and then when you try and replicate that in kind of our level or whatever, it just falls apart and it doesn't
Yeah.
actually end up working. And then if
Can
you
I tell
try
you
and
my
deviate
favorite
from
example
that,
of that?
yeah, go for it. Go for it.
So the very first, I don't know if this is the only or the uh, the Heroes of the Storm World Championship, the very first year that they had it, the team that won ended up winning their last round of games by picking Leoric and Murky, which at the time were very horrible characters that, or seemingly horrible characters that nobody picked, and they ended up using them in a way that nobody had seen in pro play and destroyed the other team with them. And
Wow.
and then people try to do that, you know, afterwards, and it's like, yeah, but they were doing a specific thing on a specific map with a team that had practiced it,
Hmm.
and it worked because that's what they were going for.
And it
Yeah.
was against a specific enemy player group that they knew that this would be effective against,
Yeah. So
right?
there's again so many
So
variables.
I want to touch on both of those two topics that we're hitting on here. The first one though is what Jake was saying is like there, because that is definitely a thing, right? Is maybe we can come up with some like verbiage, at least for the sake of this conversation, of like what is the current meta like, because YouTubers are going to bring stuff forward, streamers will bring stuff forward, maybe Reddit posts, the information will be conveyed to people, and the masses take that information and they may use it. It may not be actually what we'll call I guess the true meta, because it's just what's popular. So like a current meta is what's popular, and the true meta is like what's actually the best. um,
Yeah,
so that's kind of
by the numbers.
Hmm.
right, exactly. So, and then the other thing is, yeah, what, pro players, I think about, so this is going to be for anyone who plays Final Fantasy. Most people who play Final Fantasy are going to be triggered by my stance on healing. In Final Fantasy, as I've talked about in the past, I absolutely love healing. But the meta is that healers should deal damage most of the time instead of healing. And so, and they can contribute an okay amount of damage to the total team fight. So I understand where people are coming from when they see like they'll see like top performing players playing at like this super high level where because there's AoEs that go on the ground and things you have to dodge. And so on a pro level, or like a top tier player level, most people aren't getting hit by stuff accidentally. There's no extra healing needed. Things are going really smooth. So healers don't have a lot to heal because everyone's doing what they're supposed to do. And the only damage that you have to heal is mostly the mandatory damage, which, can be healed, and then you start throwing out damage. Now, the problem is the whole player base will see this happen and they'll say, oh, well, healers should be dealing damage all the time. They should not be focused on healing. They should be focused on dealing damage because they're doing it and we can do it too then. Right? So now you go and do any content, and if you're not dealing damage as a healer, most of the time people are going to start saying something. A lot of times people do say stuff. I came back to Final Fantasy just recently, and within the first day, I had someone who was like, "You should be dealing damage," and like
You're
my
throwing.
response to them
You're
was,
throwing the game.
"Yeah, like they're like, what are you doing? You should next time you should deal damage." And my response to them was just, "Lol, no." Like I'm just not. I'm just not going to do that. And people will be really upset by that prospect of, well, why aren't you dealing damage? But here's the thing. Yes, so let's say I contribute 10% of the damage of a whole fight out of 8 people, right? So it's not the majority, but it's an okay amount, right? What if we died at 5% of the boss's HP and then I wasn't dealing any damage that fight? You could say theoretically we would have passed if I would have just been throwing out damage. So the meta is that I should be doing that. However, let's say because I was more focused on healing and being very cognizant of who's taking hits and what's going on and responding at a moment's notice, because instead of focusing on dealing damage, I'm focused on the battle itself. What if I made certain saves during the fight that protected like a wipe from happening? Maybe I saved the tank, or maybe I saved a DPS or two, and by saving that DPS from dying, I actually granted us more damage, because if they're dead, they're dealing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So maybe I'm actually earning more damage for ourselves in total. So now we come into a situation where the player base has a current meta potentially, and it's difficult to say, and then the true meta could actually be healers focusing on healing, right? So, but it's just what's being perpetuated, as George said, by the top percent of players, right? They're adapting players of, who are getting hit by crap and who are, not that super great, are getting hit by stuff and need the additional healing, but they're telling me, you got to follow this current meta strategy, not the true meta of like what's actually best.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's really important for people to realize is that when they see like these top players, there's probably really good communication going on, which if you're playing, with pugs, just pick up groups or even sometimes just with like your regular friends, your level of communication might be a long day of work or whatever, and you're not like, you know, zoned in how some of these pro players are. So there's top tier level of communication going. There's top tier level of execution happening, and this is not the first time they're doing it. They came through this and failed hundreds, maybe even thousands. Who knows how many times they failed till they finally got it, down the way they wanted it to be. And like part of my problem with like people adhering with meta, like I understand why people want to do it. It supposedly should be, like you said, the most efficient tactic. And at the same time, especially if you're playing with random people on the internet, you have no real way of gauging how good they truly are, at least in relative to you. And so there's a certain level of comfort when you see someone else playing, like the keep thing that keeps coming back to my mind when we're talking is Overwatch. Like for a long time, there was the whole 2 tank, 2 DPS, 2 healer meta. And if you ever deviated from that, like people would immediately start flaming you on the chat, like, hey, we need this, we need this. Hey, X person, can you switch to this? And it's like, you don't even know like what I could do with this character. Like it's, I don't know, it just became irritating. Like people would tell other people to switch off a character for one. And it's like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, this person paid for this game. Let them play however they want to play the game, for one. And then for two, like this whole 2 tank, 2 DPS, 2 healer meta, like I've played millions of games against people not adhering to that meta, and they just like wipe the floor with us. Like just because they're doing this doesn't necessarily guarantee success. There's many other factors beyond that are actually a more accurate determination of your success as a team than the whole freaking adhering to meta stuff. So
Yep.
I don't know. It gets really annoying when people start like constraining other players and telling them, no, you have to play this specific way. Like when you're talking about this guy tell you, hey, you should be dealing damage. It's like, no, I pay my subscription just like anyone else for this game. I should get to play it how I want to. And I mean, at the other, to play devil's advocate against my own argument, like I said, it's kind of hard to gauge how other people are going to be. Like, it's hard for me to
Right.
gauge if I get in a room with random people, how well they're going to play the game and whether they just suck. And so there's a certain level of comfort that comes with telling them to play a specific way. So I don't know. Those are
Right.
my thoughts that come to mind when you're talking about that.
Yeah,
I just want to say one thing. Sorry, Jake. I just want to say one thing. George said like the quintessential. So the Reddit community for Final Fantasy is very much in favor of healers dealing damage, even if the greater community, whatever their greater community of the actual Final Fantasy community's thoughts are. But that's like one of the things that they meme on and they make fun of and they try and discount is like, oh, I pay my sub, you don't pay my sub, you can't tell me how to play.
I had
And they
no
try and
idea
like
that was a
downplay
thing.
that. Yeah, it's like for almost verbatim of what you said. It's so funny. But yeah, they try and
it's
downplay
true,
that all
though.
the time. Is like,
Like,
you don't pay his sub, you can't tell him how to play, and they all laugh about. That's like, well, I mean,
it's true though. Like, think of any other thing that you would pay for, and someone came to you and, oh, I'm paying for this pizza, but I'm having someone else add anchovies to it. It's like, no, that's I want this product how I want it, and I'm paying for it. Like, I don't know why it's like becomes okay in gaming to tell other people how to consume something that they paid for when
okay,
it's like,
Jake looks like he wants to respond to that.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say specifically about this example. Yeah, you pay your sub. Well, let me. You guys have taken me so far.
Go
Let
ahead,
my
please.
brain keep up.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would say there is a way to quantify, like you have a goal when you're doing you're doing a raid or whatever cooperatively, and the goal. My response to this person is the goal being met? Because if the goals aren't being met, like the end goal that everybody's working toward, if it's not being met and somebody's not playing like their role, then it should be spoke upon. It should be like, okay, we need to figure out like what in our specific group right now, because I mean, if it's pickup groups or if it's an actual group that's been playing together, like let's talk about our tactics, like, you know, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, is everybody fulfilling their role? If you guys were just going through something and the goal was being met, fine. And this person was still like at the end of it, like, why didn't you do any damage? That's
basically the situation. We cleared, and then he said, "Hey, next time you should deal damage."
Yeah. Okay. That's just, yeah. I'm totally in your camp here because the goal was already met, right? Everybody played the game the intended way to get the goal like the developers created, right? And then this guy is like hounding you because you guys didn't finish it maybe 10% faster because you didn't do damage. And I don't even think, I think that's high. I think that's high. I don't know how much healers can do, but I think that's probably, not even to mention what you were saying about like making up, which I agree with too. It's like, yeah, but if there's one slip up, your minor percentage that you've been adding is now in a deficit because of the slip up. So yeah, it's like, do you want to finish all your raids possibly 5 to 10% faster, or not finish them all because you don't know if you're going to finish them?
Sure.
Would you gamble to finish them 5 to 10% faster, or like fail them 10% of the time? And like, what, you know, what's, you get what I'm trying to say? Like, where is the, if you're failing them 10% of the time, but the ones that you are passing are 5 to 10% faster, is,
how do you quantify which is better?
Yeah, what's the balance there?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, because I mean it's 100% because as a healer, it's my responsibility to make sure people are alive, right? If I'm compromising that and people are dying, even if it's like a small percent chance, right? Like, okay, we clear 10% faster, but let's say we have a 10% higher chance that someone will die, just because like when you use an ability in Final Fantasy, there's I believe it's 1.5 second global cooldown where after you've used this ability, you cannot use any other abilities for 1.5 seconds. So if I really needed to get a heal out on someone at just the right time, then I wouldn't be able to do that potentially. Now, there are some abilities that can be used off of this global cooldown, so that's a possibility. But again, you are suspending time that you could be available to respond to needs of healing, and so yeah, you
Which
get that
should be
10%.
your first and foremost thing. Like, yes,
Right.
if you can, depending on the threat of like what the thing that you're doing, like, is it super threatening? Is it not? Of course, you're probably going to naturally do some damage. Like, I mean, maybe not you specifically, but probably other players. That's probably how this has become popular, because people who are used to doing things over and over again, who are just like really high level, are like, yeah, I can heal, and then I can also like throw this out every now and then expects everybody else to do it, even though the goal, like, it didn't, the goal was already being met. You know, like, nobody was there any ever a point where everybody's like, hey, we nobody could finish this content. Like, there was a raid that nobody could finish until the healers started doing damage, and then we figured it
No, the
out,
game
guys.
the developers have even commented that the game has been designed that healers won't be focusing on dealing damage at
Yeah,
all.
so it's just a bunch of whiny babies, in my opinion. Then,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, and a lot of people don't like when you go into dungeons and you're higher level and you start like getting higher level gear and you go into like the level cap is 80 and you go into a level 80 dungeon, but your gear keeps getting better, right? So some of these dungeons become easier and easier. So you go into these at level dungeons and the healer's job becomes easier and easier because less damage is being thrown out at the players, right? So as a healer, you can sit there and not really do as much because you're anticipating if there's any damage spikes, or you can just start dealing damage. Now, that I can see the argument for in much, as you said, in much easier content of like, okay, it's so easy that I have large periods of time where I'm not doing anything. I can sympathize with that. I'm not necessarily going to play into that game still, but I can understand where you're coming from. But when it comes to like, content above and beyond that, they still expect, the mentality unfortunately carries forward, right? Of, oh, well, you should still be dealing damage. It's like, okay, but this is harder content. Wipes could happen at any time if I'm not paying attention. If someone dies, not only do we lose DPS if a DPS dies, I have to spend the time bringing them back to life. And so
mhm.
what's going to happen in the 10 seconds? I have to do a 10-second cast of a raise spell that will bring this guy back to life. What's going to happen in the meantime that,
Neither
this is
one of you are
happening?
doing damage at that point.
Yeah.
Right,
You've lost
exactly.
both
Neither
people
one of
doing
us.
damage.
And I can't heal anyone else. And if I do have to cancel the spell to heal someone because it's an emergency, now I'm going to start doing it again. And now they've been dead longer and I've been doing other
Yeah.
stuff. Like,
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
and
this
it's all contextual to what's going on. And the other thing I wanted to say about the sub thing is like, I agree that, but that only goes so far. Saying like, yeah, I pay the sub, I can play how I want. Yes, when you're playing with yourself, I think, but when you go into playing content where you're playing with other people, yes, there is like a very, like, the game is built to everybody's supposed to be playing a role. Now, if you continue to go in and trying to play a role and you're not playing it properly and you never finish content with people, then you should probably just play by yourself and not do that content if it doesn't fit how you want to play the game.
yeah, when I
That part I can see where you shouldn't be taking away from other people's experiences. Now if you're finishing the content and you're doing your best and you've actually like completed something and somebody's saying you're still not playing the game right, that's ridiculous.
yeah,
So,
like when I say, I'm paying the sub or I bought the game or whatever, what I specifically mean by that is like obviously that doesn't include like being toxic and ruining someone else's experience.
right.
But if it's simply just like you're not adhering to the meta, but you're still like playing the game well, you're still being efficient, you're still, enjoying yourself, which really should be the number one goal. Like I don't
Playing
see
a video game.
yeah, exactly. Like I don't see
mhm.
why someone else has the right to tell you like, "Hey, switch off that character and play this other character." Cuz
Right.
like when like what you guys are
Well,
talking about after
it's all
like
contextual, but
yes,
like I
yeah.
said,
Like cuz my experience with people doing stuff like that hasn't it's actually been when like the goal hasn't been met. I usually if the goal has been being met, people my experience is people tend to complain less. Yeah, there's, once in a
They
blue
chill.
moon.
Well, if you play Genji and they say don't play Genji, he's not meta, and then you like cream the enemy team, you're crushing them, no one's gonna say anything. They're gonna be
Exactly.
like,
Yeah.
yo, your Genji was sick.
But like,
Now there'll
okay,
still be
let's use
one
that
guy who's
example.
like, "Oh, you got lucky," but
Yes,
yeah,
there's always that one
you're
guy.
still a trash player. You should not play that. Yeah, there'll be that one
Right.
guy.
But like,
probably.
let's use the example of Genji. Like, let's say that's a perfect example. The team has an enemy Pharah. She's like flying around, and Mercy's at her side the entire time. She's flying around, like raining down things on you. It happened so many times. I would be playing with a Genji. Sometimes even my friends would be playing Genji, and then people like, "Oh, you got to switch off Genji. Go McCree. Go McCree. Take care of this Pharah for us, Genji." And like we'd be losing, and so everyone would pile on the Genji. But what they didn't realize is that the Genji had gold damage, gold kills, and the Pharah was dying. He was the only person killing the Pharah. And so by telling this person to switch to McCree, to a character that they had less experience with, they would be doing worse. But because he wasn't the meta character to take care of Pharah, everyone would dogpile on this person. It's like, oh, we lost because of you, Genji. Like that's the stuff where I'm like, okay, this person A, bought the game, and B, was doing amazing. Let them play how they want to play and how they're used to playing, and they were getting the job done. The overall goal of like moving the payload or capturing the point or whatever may be wasn't being met. But this specific player, playing Genji, the non-meta character, although Genji was meta, but in this specific example, he wasn't.
Sure.
This person was still doing outstanding. And so like here comes the conflict of like people trying to pigeonhole all other players into playing the meta when, you know, there's so many other factors that would determine whether that would be successful or not. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that exactly what you're talking about gets into a very larger conversation that I don't know if we've had on here before, but that definitely Graham and I have had about the things about Overwatch specifically, that not only the meta but just the way that like you were describing with the Genji. That was a conversation we had where I was like, people will be more interested in talking about what should be happening than playing the game.
yeah.
Like that happened to me so many times where it's like people are just checked out because in their mind there's a checkbox of things that aren't happening that should be happening, and that's where like everybody has a solution for it, right? Like a theoretical solution for it instead of just playing the game. And it's just inherently a thing that I think about Overwatch that is just bad. Like it's a game that's built for such cohesive team cooperation, and that most people play as pickup games. Like, right, majority of players are probably playing pickup games. And so that environment mixed with the fact that you can just switch characters at any time, all that and everything about the meta just like creates like a really bad player experience to me. And I don't think it's necessarily like it's definitely a lot on the community and the players, but I think it's also just like the game kind of just lacks a lot of things, and or it's trying to be one thing specifically that just doesn't like, it appeals to everybody as an ideal, but in actual practice it's just a very frustrating thing that people like will still out of competition like try to strive to be like really good at it and enjoy it, but it just like ends up being a frustrating like spin your wheels type of situation a lot of the times, and it just feels frivolous and like meaningless to me when I'm playing it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think about man, I wish I could remember what the source was exactly, but I remember when Jeff Kaplan talked about the fact that you know, the community has this like ideal for their meta and what they think is the best and what's, you know, oh, this is overpowered and this always wins and blah blah blah. And then he would say, you know, sometimes the community is right, but when we look at the data and we see what's actually good and what's actually winning, it's not usually aligned all the time with what players are saying that it is. You know, this player is underpowered and needs to be buffed, and this character's OP. And it's like, well, it's actually closer to 50% win rate and loss rate and stuff like that. So, you know, it's not really
Yeah, I
true.
remember that. It was one of his, he would just address the community through his videos sometimes, and I think it was during one of those that he mentioned that.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, I just don't know which one it was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
mean,
true.
right now,
Like,
yeah, it's crazy. Right now in the Genshin Impact community, at least on Reddit, they believe that Kiki is like a trash character. She's like totally awful, just the worst. But her healing is like incredible. It's like it can heal anyone like all the way up, but it's like, oh, but healing is worthless. Like if it's not damage, it's worthless, right? So like everyone like all the time, I can't it's so just insufferable that everyone is always like comments just on unrelated posts like, I wish Kiki got a buff. Mihoyo's got a buff Kiki. She's so bad. Like, crap, I got Kiki from the gotcha. She's the worst. She's literally useless. It's like literally useless. Whoa, that's like pretty big. That's a big accusation. She's completely broken. It's like, whoa, she doesn't work. Like her healing doesn't work. No, she's a great character. She heals just fine. She performs the role that she's designed for perfectly. Now, there can be a greater conversation of how effective and important healing is as a whole, but that doesn't change the fact that Kiki's character in general is running just fine, right? She's doing her job. And I think generally, I run Diona in my parties, which is a different healer, and I think healing is great. I do, I'm a pretty good player, but even I need healing all the time, right? Like there's healing needs. So it's frustrating to see communities just be so wrong about stuff, and just the bandwagoning that and the tribalism that happens of like, you don't think Kiki is bad? Oh, how dare you? Like everyone, look at this guy. He has a differing opinion. You better downvote him, and you better like send him death threats, and he's the one
Jeez.
ruining the game. It's like, geez, like I just thought Zhongli was not broken. I didn't think he needed a buff. It's like, well, how dare you? You're ruining the game, and he's a terrible. It's just like, okay, it's like I didn't want to
Yeah.
heal in the raid. I just wanted to focus on my role of healing and making sure everyone's alive, and so we can get through. How dare you? You're the reason we took 10 seconds longer to clear this. It's just like,
That's
and
the ugly side
and
of
to
meta.
yeah, and to what Jake is saying, like it would be great if that was the bar. If the bar was, are we clearing? Okay, if we are, just shut the frick up. Okay? You don't need to tell me that I need to deal damage, because if I carried you and all your butts after you stepped in all this AoE stuff and I healed you up and you're all still alive because of me and because I was focused on my role and we cleared, if that was the bar, there would be no problems, because good luck dying when I'm focused on healing, man. I love healing. I will not, shy away from saying that I'm an exceptional healer, and you know, so that's what I like to do. But the problem is that's not the goal for meta. Meta is we can clear this 1% faster, but we have but so they can see that, right? They see the clear time was 3 seconds faster, which is like, let's say 1%. It's like we clear 1% faster because the healer was focused on dealing damage the whole time. Or even it was 30 seconds or a minute faster, right? But a clear is a clear, guys. Come on. It's like, oh, but what
Yeah,
they
unless
don't
it's taking
see,
like 30 minutes longer than
right, that if it's like absurd, then sure, yeah, like
yeah.
that can be discussed. But like there's no end. It's kind of like late stage capitalism, or like crony capitalism, really, of like all the money's not enough. It needs to be infinite money, right?
Yeah,
Like we
and
can never make enough money.
we've said
It's
this
like,
before. It's like everything doesn't have to be perfect all the time. Like
yeah,
I don't see efficiency as the number one thing. Like it needs to be just efficient enough for you to enjoy it. And if
right.
you're playing pickup games and you think the efficiency is bad and you don't like it, don't play pickup games. Play or pickup groups. Find
Yeah,
people
get a
that
group.
share that with you and be in that community, and don't like hound people that you're playing with randomly because they're not 100% efficient. Because you know what, like even if you know what you need to do, there is literal physical input. There is like input to the computer, and then the computer talking to the internet, to everything, and like nothing's perfect. Like that's just kind of the big point, right? It's like you don't have to be 100% perfect all the time, unless that's your goal. Again, like if somebody wants to clear it like fastest and nobody's cleared, like whatever, do it, do that, find people that
Sure.
you want to do it with. But that's like a whole different experience than just like, what you're saying. You were just in a pickup group, right? Just like going through.
Right.
So
That's
you got to separate that stuff, because you can't do that all the time, every second that you're playing the game.
Yeah, I really, really like the way you put that because that kind of like touches on what we just talked about. It's like, okay, let's say it's a 5 minute fight. If you cleared 10 seconds faster or 30 seconds faster, truly is your enjoyment of the did you have that much more fun by clearing 30 seconds faster? Sure, if we were adding 10 minutes, okay, yeah, that's probably going to affect your enjoyment of a 5 minute fight. I get that. But if it's if it's even like 10% faster, like there's a window of enjoyment. If we cleared because I was, 10% faster or 10% slower based on the damage I was dealing, you're going to have generally the same experience, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to be losing that much enjoyment from the fight, right? It's like, yeah, but we could be clearing yeah, I understand. I get it. I understand that's a possibility. What you don't see is the invisible percentage of the fact that we could have wiped
Yeah,
20%
exactly.
more if I wasn't focused on this. You can only see the number that we cleared 1 minute faster. I get that. But so that's its own thing. But like your enjoyment is going to be the same if we're being really honest.
Yeah.
Like
Plus, you
I
don't
like the way
know
you put that.
you don't know what's going on with the other person. You don't know if they're just learning how to play that
Yep.
specific style or if they're focusing on something specific that time. Yeah. Again, it's like if they fail or something, you can be like you can talk with them and be like, "Hey, what's up? Like, why did you fail?" Or here's maybe some pointers or something. Or let's completely redo like what we're doing here to get this goal met, or let's not play together. Those are the
Right.
options. Not like let's beat the thing and then complain. Like that's
Right.
just
Yeah,
like the
but
worst outcome to me. Like that's
it is the worst.
that's
It
worse
was
than
pretty
failing
bad.
and then everybody being like, upset with each other, because then at least you like if you legit failed for reasons, you're gonna find out eventually. Like,
Right.
but
If you fail and are salty, it makes sense. But if you win and are salty, it's like, what's wrong with you exactly?
yeah,
Why are you the way you are?
It's funny when you were talking about that whole like clearing, you cleared 30 seconds faster. Like, what's your enjoyment of the game going to be like? It reminded me back in when I used to play Dragalia Lost. Like, a lot of times
Okay.
there was a lot of the fights where if you did specific things at certain moments of the fight, you could clear legitimately like a minute faster or 2 minutes faster. And the fights as a whole weren't that long. But like what would happen a lot is like we would miss the timing to clear this, fight that would eventually take us 3 minutes. We could have cleared it in 1 minute. And so we missed the
Right.
timing. Yeah.
There's the break. If you break the boss
Yes.
at a specific mechanic, it skips like a huge
Yeah,
chunk,
exactly. Yeah. And
right?
so, and you could wail on them and do all this stuff and make the fight, even half as fast. But
Right.
a lot of times what would happen is we would miss that specific timing break or break timing.
Yeah.
And then someone would quit. And so we'd have to restart the whole lobby and re-queue up and look for someone else. And we would spend like 3 or 4 minutes just on queue, where if that person would have stayed, we would have already beaten the boss and moved on with our lives. But
And even probably
and
gone
and
into
that
another fight again.
exactly, yeah. And if we had done the break timing correctly on that one, we would have beaten the boss potentially twice already in
I
the
will
time it took
say
us to
that a
queue.
caveat to that is that it is a mobile game, and maybe those people like were really crunched for time
Possibly,
because they were
maybe.
like doing it like literally at a time that they probably shouldn't have been doing it,
That's true.
or something. They're like,
Like
oh,
on a
I have
lunch
enough time to
break.
do
Yep.
this. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
when they didn't get the skip, they're like, I'm not invested in this really anyway. I'm just gonna
That's true.
leave. And then so I would imagine there might have been some of that, but I could also see people just like sitting there playing it
In
for 2 hours and sometimes leaving just because it annoyed them like the tiniest little bit, when actually if they're going for efficiency, it would have been better to just stick it out than to restart, because they got to go through the queue and everything
Yes.
as well
Right.
again. So
Yeah, see, that's the irony, right?
yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
sure there was a little bit of both of that.
I'm
but,
sure too. Yeah, there was definitely some
in
people that were like, "Oh, I have like 2 minutes right now on a break or whatever, and like I'm
right.
at
And I
work
go
or
in
something."
and try and
Yeah,
I will say though, to what George is saying, there was a lot of that in Dragalia. A lot of like, if you don't follow if you don't have the meta character, if you don't have the meta like cards, because you can equip cards and
Oh
stuff.
yes,
If you don't have the
yes.
meta cards on the character, and if you don't break the boss at the exact moment to clear all of these mechanics, it's freaking over.
Yes.
They won't even start with you if you don't have the meta characters and cards on.
And it's
You could literally clear normally, no problem. But if you don't have that freaking meta set up, they're gonna leave right
yeah,
away.
and actually, I do, now that you mentioned the cards, I do remember that it's a lot of the people, like there's a card that goes, really? Like that's what it says, like really, and it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
question exclamation
Really?
mark. And when we wouldn't break the boss at
A
you know,
stamp.
yeah, it's a
Just
stamp. It's
for the terminal, a chat stamp you can
yes,
put in.
yeah. So it would just appear in the screen, and the person would spam like really, and then they just quit and
You
leave the
play
game.
that character?
Yeah, no, it wasn't even. Sometimes it wasn't even with the character. It was when we wouldn't break the
With the
boss. Yeah,
cards.
at the
Or
right time.
boss.
Yeah, and they'd say really, and then they just like would leave, and so that's how you knew that this person, they weren't like. If it was something where like,
there's
oh, I
just-
ran
you
out of
can't
time,
get
I
away
gotta
from
bounce.
some of that.
Yeah,
That's-
but it's just
that exists everywhere.
really.
It's like when I'm playing Magic the Gathering and the person passes priority to me, and if I don't play a card within 1.5 seconds, they spam your turn or hello.
Ah.
It's like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Who hurt you?
Yeah,
Who hurt you?
or like
I'm about to hurt you. Just hang on.
and like is it Apex or PUBG where they give you like jump leader? Was it PUBG?
No,
can't-
Apex has
Was it
leader.
Apex?
It was Apex.
Apex, yeah.
I think.
Apex, they would pass you the jump leader, and then when you wouldn't jump where they ping, like they were the leader, and then they pass it to you, and they ping where we should jump to, and then when you don't jump there, they like start typing in the chat or start talking to you. It's like, dude, why'd you
I never
pass it to
experienced
me?
that. I always
oh, really?
experienced just people just jumping on their own.
Oh no, like
Yeah,
they would.
they're
It'd
just
be
like,
like the leader
"You're not
would
going
ping
where
a
I wanna
spot,
go?"
and then the other person would just
That
like,
happened a
already
lot
be,
too, actually.
like across the map. Yeah, that's just
Yeah, but they would pass
yeah.
it to me, and then I'm like,
Again,
oh,
that's-
okay, I think we should go here. And then like the plane would pass, and they'd be like, ping some other like way. I'm like, no, that's like way too far, dude. And it's like, and then they like start typing in
Yeah.
the chat. I'm like, what are you getting mad at me for? You were jump leader. Like, why'd
That's
you
why I
pass it
like
to
that
me?
that game is. It's like it sucks that it doesn't have 4-player as well, but it's also like I kind of liked that it was only 3 because it's easier to get a group together, and that's kind of a point that I want to make is like this. Some of this stuff is just mitigated if you just find a group that you like to play with and you play with, and it really
Yeah.
sucks for people that that can't do that for whatever reason. You know, that don't have a regular group to play with, and I imagine that most people, even if they don't know somebody, can probably find something eventually by playing. You know, if you're a likable you know, not if you're not spamming really all the time. But it's just sucks that you may have to wade through that and deal with some of these people in the meantime. But yeah, like I said, I think that I think Overwatch would be a better game for me personally if it was always played with a full group of people that I know.
Yeah.
No matter what the
Oh, for
outcome would
sure.
be. No matter if we won
For sure.
games, didn't matter. We could play 100 games and not win one, and I would probably still have a good time if all of us were together and we were like at least like talking and trying and and whatever and just adapting to what was happening rather than you know, pick up games where somebody's just screaming at you because you won't change to the right character because
yeah.
everybody else picked this and that and yeah. So it really sucks that it's that way, but
So-
it's just kind of a thing, especially with very, very tight knit competitive stuff. And the faster paced something gets, the worse that those things become. Like you were saying with Tregalia, it's something that's happening at a fast pace, and people are in a hurry because it's a mobile game sometimes, not all the time.
Yeah.
And same thing with Overwatch. Overwatch is very fast paced, and so everything happens really fast. There's not a lot of time to like adapt to your teammates. If you know, people don't want to do that. They just expect things to happen. If they don't happen the right way, then it's off to the races with the toxicity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just a really big shame, right? Like I talked about, like there's the invisible percentage of like, because I don't deal damage as a healer generally, you know, I have a higher percentage of people living, right? Which just changes the invisible dynamic of the entire group, right? But it's not quantifiable, so the biggest problem with like meta is just like it's so a lot of aspects of it can be so unquantified, right? There's no way for me to convey to someone, hey, we have a higher percentage of clearing because I'm not dealing damage. And then they go, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like we're gonna clear faster if you are dealing damage. So what are you on about, right? So it's just I wish there was some way to convey that or to get that information across, like some sort of solution to the current like landscape of meta, right? Because like once people have dialed into their like YouTuber or their Reddit post that like outlines the math and the things of why the tangible things, it's very difficult to like not like break people out of it, just to open people's minds to the fact that like, okay, I understand what the numbers are saying, but like let's think about things from maybe a more abstract perspective. Maybe, these metas, maybe the 2 healer, 2 tank, 2 DPS in Overwatch, works in these scenarios but doesn't work in other scenarios. Maybe, we can kind of abstractly quantify that maybe this isn't the right, party setup every time, right? So I just, yeah, I don't know. I don't really have any answers for like conveying those kind of things because it's very nuanced, right? And as we know, nuanced opinions and nuanced things online is it's not a popular way of kind of looking at things.
Yeah, God bless you for getting on Reddit and like dealing with these communities. And I know you probably interact a lot more with people, and I know you do it out of
Unfortunately.
like a lot of people probably take you the wrong way, and I'm not saying that because I take you the wrong way. I'm just saying that um, it is hard to get out there and try. You do it out of passion for sure when you're saying something, and I'm sure that you've come at people cross before, and people have come at you cross before. It's we all have our heated moments, and but I know you haven't done anything like probably. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen your Reddit page, but I assume that you're not out there just like a complete degenerate when you're trying to tell somebody something. But
Only half the time.
people aren't. They're ready to fight. They're ready to have a differing or they're ready to defend against something rather than to actually have a conversation about it, and for the majority. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Especially
so
online and in like social
the
media.
way I deal with it is I just don't play those games. I don't have those interactions if it's a problem for me. It's that's and if I do like a game and there's things I it's not my job. It's not my job to explain to somebody the nuances of something. And I do have passion for stuff, but it's like I have been blessed to have friends to play a lot of different group games with. Not all of them, but we line up sometimes with stuff.
Yep.
And so that's the advice I would give to somebody who might be struggling with these types of things, is just like try and find a good friend group to play with. I mean, and if you are really passionate about something and you want to try and change people's minds, maybe you can, and maybe that's how you find your friends.
True.
Yeah, especially in today's world where there's like a Discord for anything and everything.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a community out there that thinks just like you. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe a good way kind of going, I thought of this while you were kind of explaining that, Jake, is like maybe even just finding a way to convey the worth of your meta, right? Or not even, I don't even want to say meta because it's not really your meta. It's just like your way of playing. Like if you truly believe that you can get results in the way that you're playing, like I said at the very beginning, right? To kind of bring this like round full circle, it's like I'm definitely in the camp of people who like to min max stuff. Like sometimes it's definitely enjoyable to not worry about the min maxing, and I do that a fair share too. But like I really enjoy taking what I love in a fun perspective and just like bringing it as far as it'll go, because I'm not looking, I don't take fun in the min maxing alone. It's let's bring this thing that I like, meta or not, and let's see how far it goes, right? And so maybe trying to take that and showing people like, listen, I know you want me to play McCree, but I'm really good with Genji. Let me show you what I can do, or I understand you want me to deal damage, but just it's difficult for people to watch, but like watch at the saves that I can make on this group because of, I'm more
Mm-hmm.
on top of the ball than other people. So
Yeah, and it's so hard because again, that's like a fast-paced scenario, and if you're on voice chat with everybody, maybe you can explain why you're playing. Like, hey, um, I'm actually really like punching a good hole right here. If we can just if we can adapt in this way or something, or if like you could just focus a little more on that, but without being like, hey, you're not doing your job, because it's a
right,
team game. Like it's so easy to point fingers, like George said before, especially in games like that. I mean, uh, MOBAs are the worst too. It's just like like the second one person slips up or like does something a different way that nobody likes, like everybody's just gonna point the finger at that person, and they're gonna throw that they will take just like the person quitting in Dragalia when you don't get the thing. Like people will mentally take a loss immediately sometimes and throw that game away because they're like, oh, this person's like not doing it the right way, so we're not gonna win anyway. So I'm not even gonna try. I'm just gonna flame them and I'm gonna fucking meme or whatever over here, because like I'm pissed off now and now I'm getting my enjoyment from just ruining their time too or something, you know.
right.
So it's just real. It's just so hard to do, especially in these hyper competitive environments, where it's fast paced. To not like point fingers and to be like, we're supposed to be a team here. Everybody like I've played a lot of games where people will say that they'll be like, hey guys, we're supposed to be a team. Like let's just work together. That usually never shines through. Like sometimes, but
Right.
it's very very hard. And again, I can't think of any other way to mitigate it besides just like try to play with people that you know.
Yeah, it's the best
Yeah.
way, really. There's really no other way, because when people try and say online, like, let's try and be a team, everyone else will dunk on that person, and it's not pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, then they'll be like, "Oh, what are you doing for the team over there?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thankfully in the Final Fantasy community, if you do try and remind people that, hey guys, like let's, maybe they're not doing it exactly the way that they want. As long as there's at least one other voice of reason, I've noticed, because I've been in many groups and people have come to me consistently and said, hey, I noticed you're not dealing any damage, so you want to fix that? And my response is usually, I'm focused on my role and I want to make sure that everyone's staying alive. So, I'm not going to be focusing on dealing damage, right? And a lot of people will cause a stink about that. I've even been kicked from like doing content with people because they vote kicked me because I was not dealing damage. Yeah, it's
Wow.
unbelievable. Um, but if there's at least, I find, at least in the Final Fantasy community, if there's one voice of reason that says like, okay, he's not doing it the way we want, but we're gonna be able to clear anyways. At least we won't die. Let's try and work together as a team. Then usually people kind of come around. So it really depends. Community to community. I find Final Fantasy's community, despite the toxicity that comes with this healing, nonsense and healing damage nonsense, the community is actually pretty good overall. Some people
Yeah.
are a little zealous about it.
Yeah,
So
and to turn to play devil's advocate with the other side there, like I wouldn't be upset for somebody like a group saying, "Hey, we need the healer to do damage. Can you do that? Yes or no? If you can't, we're going to kick you because this is what we expect and this is what we want."
but it was a pickup
It,
group.
Yeah, okay. Well, if everybody else in the group agreed against you, whatever, that's the way they want to play the game, and that
Sure.
sucks. That really sucks. That like they probably could have done the content with you and they decided not to, but that is their choice again too. Like it's your
Yep.
choice to do that and it's their choice to do that, but again, everybody should be able to play how they want and it reach a goal as a community. It's
Right.
just that if it's really not that big of a deal, like maybe there's some substantial amount of data that I think you would probably know though. That's like, hey, yeah, we should be like everybody should be doing this, and it's just like across the board. I just don't believe that, and it's not conducive to a good community to be like that if there's no reason for it.
Right. Be
Yeah.
so extreme.
And people
Yeah,
got to
it's just
remember
too
that
extreme.
at the end of the day, it's just a game, and I don't say it's just a game as in like a way to dismiss or to downplay or to like prevent people from being passionate about it, because I think all those things are well and good, but like you're there to have fun, and like that should be your number one goal, not this like, I don't know, because a lot of times when, I don't know, just from personal experience, you'd get off of that game, and even though you won, you didn't actually have
Yeah.
fun. Whereas other
Right.
times you would lose, but the team was just a hoot and you were all chatting and laughing and having fun. And yeah, you lost at like the game goal, but you actually had way more fun than you would have if if the team
Right.
behaved in a different way.
It's not a waste of time, right? You may have like lost and have to do it again, sure, but like the time isn't necessarily wasted from a fun perspective because
Hmm.
you had fun,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah,
Like I
that's
don't want to lose. I don't want to lose either. I want to clear the content. Like
And
I don't
have
want to
fun.
waste my time. Right.
Yeah.
I want to clear and have fun. But like at the end of the day, you are playing to have fun,
Yeah.
so it's not that big of a waste.
Yeah.
yeah, BR besides the small amount of time where I kind of went crazy and probably got a little too nutty with it when I was playing BRs a lot. That's how I felt. It's like you don't win most of your matches when you're playing
Right.
a battle royale. But I had so many fun moments that's what that game's about. Like it's not about the end result of the match. It's about like what happens. I mean, and sometimes something crazy happens at the end, whether you win or not, and it's just fun. Like I don't know how many PUBG matches I just finished just laughing my butt off, because something stupid happened, and it was just it created so many moments. It wasn't like getting a chicken dinner for the first time was really great, but that wasn't what the game was about to me. It wasn't about winning. And when it did become that for a small amount of time for me, it ruined the whole game. Like, and I
Yep.
luckily was able to walk away from that when it wasn't, working for me anymore and realize that. And, that's why I was really sad that everybody didn't get into Apex as much when it came out too, because I had the same thing. Like I got a little bit more into trying to be hardcore about Apex as well, like at first. But it's still so much fun. It's not as wacky as PUBG though. There's something about PUBG's way that made stuff a little more hilarious, and maybe it was just the
Right.
more of the downtime that you get
And
to
the
just
and
mess
the
around.
jank.
Yeah.
The jank
PUBG's
and the
jank, yeah.
definitely
downtime.
janky.
Yeah, because you spend a lot of time with each other. You're just hanging out like,
Looting
you
and
know,
yeah.
you're just chatting it up while walking around in
It's
this
more
world.
focus. Yeah, it's more of a focus on like the journey, right? That
Yeah, and
Apex
then
is
you're
like
like
go go
talking
go
about how,
and
where you're gonna go, how we're gonna get there. Like, yeah, let's
right.
you grab that car, I'll grab this motorcycle, and then we're gonna
That's
jet
true.
over here, and then you accidentally run into
Yeah,
somebody, and I don't know. There's just yeah,
I
and
do remember that. It was quite fun.
Apex was definitely a lot more fast paced, so it's not as crazy. But
Yeah.
my point is, yeah, it was about the journey. It wasn't about ending the game properly. You
Yeah,
know.
and I think that's a good maybe that's like a good way to combat like meta mentality is just like let's not take the meta so seriously, right? Like we talked about like the time. Like let's focus on the clearing, let's focus on the journey and
Mm-hmm.
not so much of the 10 seconds, the 10%, the whatever that we're shaving off that's really not fundamentally changing the experience in any way. Like I've done so many pickup groups and we like clear and I'm just like, okay, we cleared. Like we had a good time, we cleared. I have no idea if we went over time or if we went under time. I have no idea, but and most of the time when nobody notices that I'm not dealing damage and we clear, nobody notices that I wasn't dealing damage. They didn't go, "Man, that was really long." It's like
Too
we
slow.
made it through.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just made it through. We cleared and that was all that it was. So, let's just not I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, but like maybe let's just not take meta so seriously. I think there's aspects of meta that are like really great. Like I love digging into like the math of how things work. Like that's part of how I min max. Like I figure out what's fun and I figure out what works. Like here's the numbers and let me play with these numbers and I got to use these things in the right combination. And so I like to use that math and that information and that like data to maximize the fun I have with my fun stuff. But, we don't have to take that data all the time and like use it to do whatever the current meta is, not even like the true meta, but like the current meta and just be like, we have to follow this. This is what the YouTuber said.
Yeah. Plus, I like when there's room for creativity and trying new stuff. I mean, how
Yeah.
do you know sometimes, especially when we're talking about something that has a lot of variables to it. That's part of the fun sometimes for me, is like trying to be creative, trying new builds, trying to just see if something works, or even if it's not the most efficient thing that you can do.
Right.
There's a lot of that missing from a lot of games I've played in the past too that I wish was there. So I
Yeah.
personally am going to search for that and try and play games and play with people that have that type of mindset. So
Yeah, in Dragalia, there was a character called Nadine, and she had a cell phone, and she would attack with cell phone flashes. Like that was her like thing. And granted, she was a pretty decent character, but like I just was like, I'm gonna play this character because she's fun, and it's you like you said, it's great to be creative and come up with like funny builds. Or like when I play a rogue in World of Warcraft, I have like a very specific world PvP build that I've created, right? Like I've done the research of like, here's the meta builds, here's some like builds if you want to do something specific, and then I go, okay, what do I like to do when I world PvP? What are some talents that are going to help me, pick from this talent tree, and I'm going to pick what I want. And if someone looked at it, they'd probably be like, I noticed you don't have this talent and these talents that are going to increase your DPS by like 3% on fights sustained over 34 seconds, and so I don't think you really should be running that build. It's like, I get that, but I like having the opportunity. Like I had this one thing called ambush, where like you can just open up, like you go from invisibility to opening up into like a massive amount of damage. And a lot of people say, you should never open with ambush ever. Like you should always open with the stun, and the stun is, listen, I get it. The stun's really good. But sometimes it's just hilarious to open up into freaking ambush and then immediately use my combo finisher and just kill someone immediately. Just have them be dead. They're just alive, and then all of a sudden, within a second, they're dead. So it's like, I don't know. It's not
goal
meta, but it's,
accomplished.
yeah, goal accomplished. It worked.
And it was
So
fun.
there was
You had fun.
it was fun as heck. It wasn't fun for them.
Yeah, well,
I'll tell you that.
yeah.
But it was fun
There's
for
that.
me. Yeah. So, you can have fun without meta. And as long as, focus on goal accomplishment, I think it's a good takeaway that Jake has said.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's complicated. Games are complicated. People are complicated. Communities are complicated.
Indeed.
It's especially if it's a hobby you put a lot of time into. Take a little bit. Think about it. Think about how you want to experience what you're playing. I know
Yeah.
it took me a long time to get that way. So yeah.
Yeah. And, think about the nuance. It's not always so black and white. In fact, it's mostly not black and white most of the time.
Yep.
So there's always room
And
for
take
gray.
breaks. I've had such good
Seriously.
experiences taking breaks from something when I get too serious about it. It's
Yeah.
great. So anyway,
We're just about out of time, but you said before the podcast there was a couple games you noticed at E3 you wanted to shout out. So
yeah, I
you
missed
wanna-
some things on the Summerfest. What is it called?
the Summer Games Fest.
Yes. I don't even remember.
Hold on, I
like
have it
that?
pulled up right here actually. Summer
Okay, you
Games
got it there.
Fest,
Yes,
which
that's
I didn't
what it
even
is.
Summer Games
realize
Fest.
was like a thing kind of separate of E3, but
Yeah,
at
it's
the
separate
same
E3.
time-
Jeff is trying to make it the new E3.
okay.
away from the
Regardless,
corporate
yeah,
stuff,
I
which is-
I missed some of those things. I know I got some of them because you posted the trailers for them, but I didn't even see their full lineup. So I just wanted to bring out or shout out Salt and Sacrifice, the
Oh, yes.
sequel to Salt and Sanctuary. One of
Right.
the only Souls-like games I have never been able to, or I did not put down until I finished. I completed it in one
one
fluid
sitting
run.
or one.
Wow.
Okay,
Not one sitting, but
Right.
I didn't take break from it. I just
Right. You were
went right through
consistently
it.
playing it.
Yeah, I was consistently playing it and just enthralled with it, and I've recommended it to so many people. It is the most actual Souls-like 2D game I've ever played. Pretty much, it's I don't know. Of course, it looks different and it's 2D, but as far as mechanics and ideas and everything, it's pretty much just that. And I don't know, I just like 2D. I like 2D games a lot more for some reason. I just gravitate towards them. So I finished. It's also got a little bit of Metroidvania stuff in there. Not too much. But there are like sections of the map you can't get to until you get a specific power up, which I know is not really a Dark Souls thing.
Sure.
But everything else about it, and it's just a really good game. I can't wait. It had co-op. The biggest thing about this one is the old one had co-op, but it was only like I don't know if it was online or not, but I feel like it was just shared the same screen. But this one they're pushing it has online co-op, so the other one must have not had it. Which
Nice.
is really cool because I did think the co-op. I watched some people play it on Twitch. I never played it with myself, but it did look really fun. Like it was just full on. It wasn't like they got some random character. Like they got to play a character that they built and everything. So
Right.
playing that with another person online and not having to share the actual same screen, because it looks like you can go like off screen a little bit, seems like it'd be really cool.
Yeah, seriously. I haven't played the first one, but it's on my list.
It's a great game. It's such a great game. And then Solar Ash is the new game from the people who made what is it called? Hyper Light Drifter.
Oh,
okay.
okay.
Yeah. So this
All
is
right.
and I haven't played Hyper Light Drifter. Should have.
It's
That
a
game
pretty good.
looks
I'd
pretty
say it's
cool.
pretty good.
But this is like a 3D over the shoulder game and third person, and the gameplay trailer looks kind of like Shadow of Colossus. Like the character is jumping up on this huge flying beast and knocking down nodes to take it out, and it kind of looks.
You've got my attention.
Yeah, it kind of looks like the art style of Hyper Light Drifter, just with a different color palette, and of course not as pixelated because it's 3D, but
Right.
kind of in that same vein. So
Wow.
I'll have to look it up.
Yeah,
First
I
I'm
haven't-
hearing of it, so
yeah,
Mhm.
it's a very quick little gameplay video, but definitely looks cool. And I know that a lot of people hold Hyper Light Drifter in high regard, so that's something to look out
Nice.
for.
nice.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. That's interesting.
Yeah, other small
right.
shout outs. I don't really have anything else to say about
Yeah.
it, but Ollie World looks really cool. And then Metal Slug Tactics. I don't know why we need that, but I guess we're getting it.
Metal Slug.
You remember
Wow.
Metal
Metal
Slug?
Slug.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're making a
Yeah.
turn-based tactical thing.
Really?
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, those are just little things that I missed.
Nice.
There was some other stuff on there that I missed, but it didn't seem like as interesting. So
Gotcha. Okay, well, that's our time for today. But next week, if all goes well, we will be doing our month-end conversation a little bit earlier than usual because of the 4th of July break or holiday coming up. So hopefully we will see everyone there next week for our month-end conversation with the full list of boys, the full roster. But we'll have to
Hopefully.
see. Hopefully. And then if not, we'll see you guys next week for another usual conversation. Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I think this was a pretty cool discussion about like meta and stuff like that. So pretty
Definitely.
sick. All right. Thanks so much for joining
See
us,
everyone.
you two. And thank you, everybody.
Peace.
See you next time.